Hello, and welcome back to Essentials, the series where I cover some foundational skills for hackers which are relevant to bug bounty. And in this video, I want to cover some of the introductions to Recon, and namely, I want to cover fuzzing. So, what's fuzzing? It's a bit of a strange name, isn't it? So, fuzzing is where we test names on the server to see if they exist. Sounds confusing? I'll show you now. So, say we have this slash home directory, right? That's like a it's on a website. It's quite a common thing, right? And say there's another directory called account. We don't know that it exists though. And let's say there's like some secret stuff there, right? If we were in the home directory, then we could test a lot of names to see if there's different directories available, right? So we could test like admin. We could test like what else? We could test like panel or something like that. And then once we test all of those, the server might give us different responses for some of them. By doing that, we've tested a lot of names and we've seen if the server responds differently to them. That's basically fuzzing, right? So if we tested like hundreds of names and then we found like admin was there and it was like an open admin panel, that would be a vulnerability we could find with fuzzing. But it also helps us to discover new attack surfaces. So if we fuzz a lot, then we can find maybe new features. If we find other subdomains, so subdomains are just here. So just before this, that's a subdomain because it's basically before this, but it still has like the same name here. And a directory is here. So it can help us basically discover a new attack surface and discover new features that other people might not be testing on. This is good because in modern bug bounty, being very good at finding bugs often isn't enough anymore. You have to actually be the first one to find them because there's a lot of competition. So Recon can be very helpful in that, and especially fuzzing. So obviously doing it by hand is it would be very inconvenient. So there's a lot of tools that we can use to help us actually do this. And if you're on Linux, there's a lot of tools you can use. If you're on Mac OS, there's a decent amount as well. On Windows, it's a bit harder because the terminal and installing stuff is just more difficult. But I'll show you one tool that actually everyone can use. It's for basically all OSs, including Linux, Mac, and Windows. And that tool is called Caido. Caido is a HTTP proxy that I've covered in another video in my HTTP request videos, so you might want to watch that as well. But today we're just going to use the fuzzing element of this proxy. And the way you download this is you just visit Caido/download, and then you basically just download whatever kind of thing that comes up here. I think it'll automatically select it on whatever system you're on. I'm on Linux, so it selected that. If somehow that didn't work, then you can also click this button here, and that will take you to this page. So you want to download desktop, don't want CLI, you want to download desktop, and then you just pick whichever one will work for you. In this case, I downloaded the Debian extension here. So once you download that and you kind of run the file there and then basically install it on your computer, you'll get Caido, which will look like this. So when you start off, you'll probably start off in the project space, which is here. You'll start off here, you'll need to create a new project, and then once you create the new project, you can access the rest of Caido. So what I want you to actually do is to follow along with this video so you can actually get a little taster of this, right? So the way we can do this is we can intercept the request like this, go to example domain and like refresh the page here. Then once we do that, it'll be intercepted in Caido, and then we can right click on the request. We can send to automate. That's what we want to do. And once you do that, you just turn off queuing here. And then you'll have the request here inside automate. So now we have it in automate. How can we fuzz? How can we test names to see if the server responds differently to them? Well, you can just delete the name here and you can actually click this plus button right here. This will add sort of a placeholder. So this is where the server is going to inject the names that we give it. That's basically how fuzzing works. So we're going to go over a lot of names. And we can do this from a text file, which we can have stored on our computer. Or we can just type it in ourselves. In this case, I'm just going to do that because I want to actually show you how it works, right? So we can type in a few names, like say home, say like admin. I don't know why it's doing that. Type in like home, we can type in, oh, because it's typing in here. Type in admin, we can type in like test, right? Then once we do that, we can also run preprocessors. This doesn't really matter. And go over a few things, but we can just press this big red button here to run. And once we press run, it'll send the requests in, and we might get different responses. It'll show us a couple of things. In this case, it shows a 404 request because these directories don't exist, and it'll show us like length and stuff like that. So we can sort by this. A 200 status code will probably mean that the place exists, like the directory exists. If it says 401 or 403, that means that it exists, but you don't have access to it. So you can test it, and then you can try and bypass that. That would be a vulnerability. If it says 404, then it probably doesn't exist. Although it could exist, and maybe the server is kind of lying to you, because some servers are just configured to respond like this to all unauthenticated requests. So that's basically how we can fuzz and actually test for directories. Now, another thing you can do is you can test for subdomains. So I mentioned subdomains. You could do something like this, and then basically start fuzzing that, and say like the simple list here, and then we could say admin staging, which is usually the name for development environments, and we can run, and then there you go. It's going to test for subdomains as well. So this is really a great tool for testing things and basically going over fuzzing. It's going to discover new directories for us, and it can also discover new subdomains for us as well. I really recommend Caido. It's my absolute favorite HTTP proxy because it's practically free. You can also do this on Burp Suite. They also have an Intruder there, and you can pretty much do the exact same features, but it's unfortunately pay gated. Well, it's not really pay gated, but it's just really slow if you don't pay for it. So in Caido, you don't have that limitation. So I actually prefer that as well. And also Kaido's cheaper anyway if you do pay for it. Now, there's another tool that I want to show you as well. So what we're going to do is, if you're following along, you should go forward the request again, and then basically intercept here. And then this time you're going to right click it, but you're going to send it to replay. Let's say default collection, right? So I'm going to come back here, and you should have the request right here. So you can come here and make sure to turn this off, because if you leave that on, it's probably going to break things. So there's another tool called Paraminer, and this is a plugin that you have to install, right? So if you're on Caido, click on plugins, you can come here and then install it here. You can click Param Finder, and you just click the install button, and it should work for you. Once you've done that, and you can come to replay, you'll click here, right click just anywhere, plugins and Param Finder, sorry. So what Param Finder will do is actually fuzz a load of different kind of features for us. So first of all, it's going to check for query parameters. What does a query parameter mean? Well, it's something up here, right? So it's a bit of data that the web server reads from the URL, right? So this is a parameter that we can send in. Then, for example, this ID parameter. And if it exists, then the server might respond differently to it. And we want to find these parameters because it could lead us to accessing hidden features. Like, for example, if this was like a URL parameter here, and we could send like, we could tell the website to access a different URL for us, well then potentially we could tell the server to access something on the local intranet and then access stuff that we weren't supposed to. That's one way we can discover parameters using Paraminer. And it's extremely simple to use. We just click Param Finder, click on query, and it'll first of all, it'll probably prompt you to select a word list actually. So I have a couple of these set up myself, but you can just click import word list and then select on what you want it to be used on. So actually, I'll show you that because I might be a bit confused. So let's say I don't have any at the moment. We just cleared all. And I want to add a word list. So I can either upload my own, or I can just say like import words, right? Then let's say I want to use it just for the query parameter at the moment. So I'll go to the sessions, I'll say stop that, go back to it, and then I'll say just test it there. And it'll go over the entire word list that I've given it. The first few requests that it sends will be like learning requests, and then after that it will actually send like real requests. Mostly. Okay, I had to get rid of home here. I had to get rid of home at the directory because I didn't really like that it was getting a 404 request. So get rid of home and then send the query parameter again. And now it should work. It's going to send a couple of these test requests. It's going to check for like WAFs and stuff like that. And then it's just going to start sending the requests in. So what it does is it sends them like grouped together like this to basically save time on requests. And it's going to get to them. You can see like how quickly it's actually testing all the parameters here. So this is example.com. It doesn't have any parameters. But if this was a real website, then it could basically find all the parameters, and it's going to tell you if the server responds differently to some of them. Now, Paraminer can test for a lot more things than just parameters, which is kind of what I like about it. It can test for parameters in the body. So stuff that looks like this, it's kind of the same thing as the parameters up here, it's just down in the body this time. And this has to be sent as a post request. It can test for headers. So you see these ones. Oops. So it can also fuzz for these header names. So certain servers will respond differently to certain headers. So like you see this accept header here. It could, for example, test for like different names. There's like, for example, if it had like a header like X API key here or something like that, if there's a header like that, it will tell you that it's found it. And that could also lead to different vulnerabilities. Maybe the header is injected into the HTML. In that case, maybe you can look for an XSS vulnerability and then try and basically deliver the payload to the victims. And yeah, it can test for headers. And then there's also more advanced features. I never really use this, to be honest. It's just made the three main here are the really ones that I use, which is the query parameters, the body, and then the the headers. Yeah, sorry, the headers and then the body. So those are two tools that you can use for Caido that are really phenomenal, and I use them a lot, especially Paraminer, because it can help you discover new things. And here you can also test for subdomains and directories like this very quickly. You can use your word list. If you're looking for word lists, actually, you can just look them up online. There's actually, I think, something called Asset Note, which has a lot of them. Like this kind of website here. Yeah, you can see here it has like a load of word lists. Like, let's see, these are Kite Runner ones. Like for hosts, you can find it. You can find just manually generated ones like DNS. So like that, you can find a lot of stuff here. API routes for this is actually one that I use a lot, and you can load that into Caido. So you can just click upload and load it in, and then you can just run it here from Automate. You can put your parameter down, literally just load it in like domains.txt, and then click run, and it'll do everything for you. So it's very nice for discovering new features. That's something that I'd highly recommend you if you're a bug context. If you're a bug bounty hunter, then you need to really start know how to use these features. And there's actually a lot more tools if you're on Linux, and I'm just going to show you one of them. I believe that you can download this on Windows. It's called Ffuf, which means fuzz faster you feel. It's quite a funny name, but it's one of the probably the best fuzzing tools you can have. It just kind of really does everything, and it's very easy to install on Linux. If you're on Linux, then you can just say sudo apt install Ffuf, and then it will install it for you. In this case, I already have it installed, so I won't do anything. And if you're on Mac OS, it's actually very easy to install. You can use brew, something called homebrew right here. That's great. If you're on Windows, it's a bit annoying here. You might want to use something called Go. So Go is a programming language, and you might have it installed. If you don't have it installed, then you're probably going to have to install it. It might be a bit annoying. Or if you have Go, you can run it. I can run it from my computer as well. And then once you have Go installed, then you should be able to install Ffuf on your Windows computer. Although really, if you want to delve in deep into these kind of tools, I do recommend getting Linux. Linux is definitely handier when it comes to downloading stuff and actually maintaining these tools. Yeah, so anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and that it gave you a better understanding of how to find more attack surface by basically testing names against the server, finding directories, finding subdomains, finding headers, etc., etc. And this is a very important skill that I want to emphasize. Really, it's about being first nowadays. Finding the features first is actually sometimes more important than being able to find the vulnerabilities. So keep that in mind and make sure to prioritize your recon. I also have a bug bounty course, which includes 12 hands-on labs, and you can actually find the links in the description. They're based on bugs that I and other bug bounty hunters have personally found, and it's quite a specific course for people who want to look into server-side vulnerabilities. And the vulnerabilities are quite advanced as well. So if you're getting into bug bounty, but if you're not actually kind of getting you can find like basic vulnerabilities, but you can't like apply them to real websites. I think this is a good course for you because I've designed it in a way that kind of reflects real vulnerabilities or stuff that I wish that I had access to when I was starting out. So really check out the link in the description and see if you like it. And anyways, I thank you for watching the video and happy hunting.